guys remember your first orgasm? I'm always curious about if people remember their first orgasm, so I ask that question a lot of people, you know, when it comes up organically in conversation. I would be surprised. It comes up a lot with me since I tend to talk about sex a lot. But a lot of people I talk to have no recollection of their first orgasm, but they might have a general idea of when and how they first started getting off, especially when the getting off was self-administered. Pretty much across the board, the guys I've spoken with on this topic have told me that this was their experience, that they got off by playing with themselves. Lots of women I know had first orgasms that were solitarily self-induced, but many more didn't come for the first time until they were with a partner. So, in the interest of further researching the topic of first orgasms, I turned to the guru omniscient of information itself, Google. When you Google, do you remember your first orgasm? One of the first links that shows up is from AnswerBag. It's a site that takes incredibly erudite, thought-provoking question submissions from readers and allows other readers to answer them. Compelling questions such as, is a bull dyke stronger than an NFL player? Should I travel out of state just for my cousin's wedding? That's important stuff. And did the Star Trek Enterprise have any recreational facilities for the crew, like a bowling alley? Well, evidently the first two questions depend on the position of the football player, the position that the football player plays, and whether or not the cousin has weed. And apparently, Captain Kirk and Spock were not afforded the opportunity of indulging in friendly games of 10 pins. However, there was an archery range on board the Enterprise. So anyways, I typed the question I was seeking answers for, do you remember your first orgasm, into the field on AnswerBag's homepage, and a nanosecond later, a pop-up window asked me to certify that I was at least 18. You know, old enough to view the content that was provided in answer to that question. You know, content of an adult nature. You know, I'm pretty certain that orgasms are not only the domain of adults, especially those first ones. Beyond the fact that websites like AnswerBag have to protect their asses by putting up those over 18 windows, which won't stop curious kids anyway, I know that it's not something that people like to think about, kids being capable of having orgasms, but they are. I know this from personal experience. So I clicked the box that said I was 18 and thought about how much information is available to kids these days that I didn't have when I was young and curious about what was happening to my body when it would erupt in rippling force on very regular occasion. I didn't know that an orgasm was an orgasm, that it had a name and a function, and that other people experienced them too. Until I was a teenager. All I knew as a kid was that it felt really just fucking good. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't care what it was called. For all I knew, it was called what it felt like, which was, of course, a super sensation. The screen came up with the answers to my question, and I was not at all surprised to find that most of the people who answered said that they too were kids when they had their first orgasms. One of the respondent stories reminded me of a first orgasm story of a guy that I used to date. His name was Charles. Charles spontaneously ejaculated one night after innocently fondling his penis as he lay quietly in his bed. He was totally unprepared for and frightened by the white goo that squirted out of him, that he ran to tell his father what happened, and his father informed his son, in no uncertain terms, that Charles' penis was broken. And if he wanted it to be fixed, he better leave it alone. It was a very, very long time before Charles touched himself again. did eventually. I know. I did not go running to my mother when I had my first orgasm. Are you glad, Mom? Probably because as a girl, I didn't have any scary white stuff shooting out of an externally dangling member that had been inexplicably begging me to fondle it. But also because I didn't want anyone to know about my rapturous discovery. I wanted to keep it to myself. Until now. So, I was getting ready to head for home, casually, innocently, one might say, given my tender age. I left my friend's backyard and hopped on my new, shiny blue bicycle. It was my prized possession ever since I'd gotten it for my birthday just a few weeks prior. You know the bicycle. Mom, you remember the bicycle? It's the one that has the white padded banana seat with the glitter flecks. The one with the high-rise handlebars and silver mylar streamers coming out of the ends. I hopped on this bicycle and down my friend's very long driveway. It was a cobblestone driveway. It was a magical cobblestone driveway. Yeah, as you might imagine, the shock of the uneven, jagged pavement was perfectly absorbed by the bicycle's 16-inch rubber tires, and so each of the wheel's revolutions worked in rhythm with the shiny padded seat, the seat that was perfectly placed right between my little legs. The seat that just so happened to create an astonishing and oh so pleasing friction with my girly bits. I didn't get far down the driveway before this pleasant friction coalesced into what my child self would have indeed described as a super sensation. An astonishing, miraculous, magnificent super sensation. Okay, and it was one that I would not soon forget, because in my very lowest of personal parts, in the most private of places, a place that had until then been largely ignored except for during moments of brief and compensatory hygienic maintenance. The entire area, and even further from my cunt upwards into my belly, through my chest and into my throat even, it erupted with such staggering force, such stupendous, righteous, harmonious commotion, that still to this day, I cannot believe I didn't fall off that fucking bicycle and bust my head open on the sidewalk. Because I came hard as hell. I was 9 years old. Yeah! As I said, orgasms are not only the domain of adults. Somehow I did manage to stay upright, while climax-induced silver stars twinkled in front of my wide-eyed child vision. And I realized that I had just experienced the most emphatically liberating, amazingly galvanizing, electrically ecstatic feeling that I'd ever been presented with during my short time upon the earth. And I realized that I wanted more. Much, much, much more. So I turned around.